I used to think breaking news meant something actually happened. Now I think it mostly means someone decided you need to feel something, fast and without much context. That's the story I want to tell today. Not about one scandal, but about the machine that manufactures them. It's called sensationalism, and it's been controlling the world's nervous system for over a century. At its core, sensationalism means stretching a story past what the facts support, leaning on shock, outrage, or fear, because those things hold attention better than accuracy does. It's not a new invention. Back in the 1890s, two rival New York newspapers fought for their readers with wildly exaggerated front pages, a style historians later named yellow journalism. The tools have changed. Instead of headlines, banner front pages. Algorithms instead of street vendors. But the underlying bet is identical. Emotion sells better than nuance. What made this personal for me was the case of Steven Stainer. In 1972, he was abducted at age 7 and held for over 7 years before escaping in 1980. A story that later became the basis for a widely watched true crime dramatization. The film turned his survival into compelling television. What it spent far less time on was the aftermath. A family that had to relearn how to live with a son who came back a stranger and a brother. Carrie, whose own life unraveled in the years that followed. The documentary format asks audience to feel the rescue as a climax. It really asks them to sit with themselves and ask the question, what happens to a family once the cameras leave? In Stainer's case, it's not unique in that pattern. Researchers who study true crime media point to the same structure over again. Cases like Dahmer's victims whose families said they were never consulted before a dramatization was made, or abduction cases where surviving family members describing having their trauma reopened every time a new special airs. The genre keeps finding fresh angles on old pain, often without asking the people still living it whether they want to be found again. Researchers point to sensationalized election coverage in 2016 and later to early COVID-19 reporting that leaned into fear over clarity, and moments where the same pattern played out at national scale. Audience left more polarized, more anxious, and in a public health crisis, less informed at exactly the moment clarity mattered most. Defenders of true crime would push back here. They'd argue these documentaries can bring real cases back into public attention, pressure reinvestigations, or even help exonerate the wrongly convicted. Families sometimes do participate willingly, hoping visibility keeps their loved one's story alive. That's a real upside. It doesn't erase the cases where consent was never asked for in the first place. So where does that leave the ethics of it all? If I judge sensationalism by its outcomes, a consequentialist question, it fails on its own terms. Whatever attention it buys is outweighed by the damage to public understanding and to the people caught inside the story. But it's not the only outcome. Journalists operate under a professional duty to verify before they publish, a deontological obligation that holds regardless of whether a specific story happens to blow up or fade quietly. Sensationalism breaks that duty by design, not by accident. There's a third way to look at this too. Virtue ethics, which ask not what happens or what's the rule, but what does this say about the character of the person telling the story? A producer who exploits a grieving family for a rating spike, even if the facts are accurate and no law is broken, is still failing a basic virtue: compassion. That's the piece consequentialism and duty alone can miss. My take, deontology is where I land hardest. Outcomes can be debated, and character is subjective, but a duty to verify, to seek consent, to minimize harm before you hit publish isn't optional based on how a story performs. That duty exists whether the documentary flops or wins an award. I don't think gripping stories is unethical. Some stories are urgent because the facts genuinely demand urgency, and journalism should never be dull for the sake of it. But there's a real difference between urgency the facts earn and urgencies that's manufactured to keep us watching. The first respects audience. The second uses them. So, what I've started doing and what I've asked you to try is the next time a headline spikes your pulse, wait a second. Give it a beat before you share it. And ask what's missing. That small pause is the cheapest and most effective defense we have against a media system built to make us react before we think.